There is an issue that plagues a lot of people in football manager circles, actually. These are circles, of course, that I move in a lot. I am, according to some sources, the largest football manager based YouTuber in the world. Obviously, that has to do with a YouTube channel that's not this one, so I don't want to break your immersion. But I spend a lot of time playing football manager. I may at least be slightly above average. I talk to a lot of people about it, and it's something that happens all the time to people that play FM. It just is. It's something that happens all the time to people that play FM for whatever reason. You learn certain parts of the game, and then you just start to do this. The problem is called Wonder Kid hoarding. And the idea is that once you figure out how to sign and develop players in Football Manager, that you just start signing so many of them, right, that you're not able to offer a kind of playing time pathway. And you end up having to sell for way less than a lot of these guys are worth because you have added so many of them that you're just not able to properly utilize all of the players that you actually have. Okay. Now, this is exactly what Chelsea is doing. Okay. It is amazing. Like, life imitates art. In this case, life is imitating this problem that I've watched people have in Football Manager for years. But what Chelsea is doing is even more insane because in Football Manager, the people that are doing it are learning how to play a video game. And at Chelsea, right, the people that are doing it are using real money, $1.5 billion of real money to kind of figure out what they're doing. But I also will say this. I love it. I love what Chelsea are doing, and I'm going to get to why. Even though I'm going to make fun of it, I also love what they're doing, and we will get to why at some point. But first, what exactly are Chelsea doing? If you feel like you've seen a lot of tweets about Chelsea signing players, and maybe they didn't end up signing all of them, I'm going to go ahead and save you the trouble. They probably did end up signing all of them. Let me see if I can find this. Yeah, this is a tweet that really illustrates it for me. These are all of the Fabrizio Romano transfer announcements for Chelsea that have gone down recently, and a lot of these guys, like whether it be Aaron Ensolmino or like Renato Fega, like all these guys, names that maybe you don't even recognize, all these guys are being signed for the first team. Okay, so you're not hallucinating. And the one that put this over the top for me, like, was I kind of ignoring it? Yeah, because some of these guys they're signing, they're going to loan right back out and whatever. Is this signing of Pedro Neto for $76 million, right? And BR Football made this lovely Floyd Mayweather vintage Todd Bowley edit for it. But the signing of Pedro Neto is the one that put it over the top for me because that's what took it from building a loan army in the same way that a lot of Italian clubs do to just raw, unstoppable financial stupidity. And for a couple of reasons. Okay, first of all, I made a video talking about how it made a lot of sense to sign Danny Olmo. That was a couple weeks ago, right? Now, it made a ton of sense to sign Danny Olmo, especially if Nico Williams was saying that, like, he isn't going to leave Athletic Bilbao. And of course, Barcelona actually did end up making that signing. But when I made that video, a couple people came back and were like, well, the reason you don't want to spend $60 million on Danny Olmo is he has injury issues. Pedro Neto's middle name is Injury. It's Pedro Injury Neto. I mean, he's like Portuguese, so his name is probably 15 names long, but you get the idea, right? And they spent $76 million on him. Right now, I watched Wolves fans' reactions to this, and you can usually get a really good barometer on whether a transfer deal is smart or not by looking at the fans of the team the player is leaving. Not the delusional ones that will just go along with whatever the club is saying, but like actual analytical driven fans. Like, for example, a fan of Wolves who is a scout for Football Manager, who I know, right? And they were saying, look, Pedro Neto, he has been one of the best players on Wolves for a period of time. He also has missed nearly half of the games that he has been, on the team for because of injury. And so the conclusion was, you take $76 million in a heartbeat. Now, this is before we talk about the fact that Pedro Neto is an attacking flank player, right? And that means that he is going to be coming into contrast with everybody from Raheem Sterling to Mihailo Mudryk to Noni Madueke. Like, all of these guys that Chelsea has been signing to play these. I mean, Christian Pulisic already bailed right? Because he was getting lost in the shuffle of all of the players that are on the wing, and they just keep adding dudes. I mean, and they also, a lot of the Brazilians they've signed, like Angela, they're all wingers. Right? I mean, where the hell are they supposed to fit in the team? How many wingers does one team possibly need? And then you've got Cole Palmer kicking around, who has to be in the team no matter what. Right? Well, he's playing around out there too, depending on what tactical setup you're putting together. It makes, and you're spending a ton of your resources on getting somebody like Pedro Neto, although a ton of resources is probably not the right way to word this, because apparently they just have the ability to spend unlimited money, because they did, Chelsea, do a good job of selling off players, particularly to Saudi Arabia, to balance out that huge $1 billion transfer window that they laid down, and all of those long contracts that mean they're fine. The only situation, amazingly, considering all of the money they're spending, where Chelsea ends up not being fine, is if they don't make it into Europe in the next 3 to 4 years, and then it's going to be more and more difficult for them to pay out the hundreds of millions of dollars that they have deferred with all of their long contracts, right? They can't do the 8-year contracts anymore because those are technically officially illegal in UEFA, but it doesn't mean you can't throw those 5-year contracts in there that you're going to be able to, maybe we add an extra year on that with like some sort of option and defer the 76 million. All of a sudden it turns into 14 million a season because the accounting tricks and wizardry. Pedro Neto also didn't make sense because of the age profile. Because if we go back to this picture, one thing that a lot of these guys have in common, right? One thing that a lot of these acquisitions have in common, as BBC says, 12 signings, £243 million spent in another transfer window for the ages here from Chelsea. They're all very young. Okay, so Pedro Neto being 24 means that he is on the older side of this, which is surprising. You know I've got no issue with signing a 24-year-old if they're going to help you win now. You know that I'm cool with that. I'm just surprised that Chelsea decided to do it, because the only remaining justification for what Chelsea was doing seemed to be the fact that they were just signing a bunch of young players and hoarding potential. And this brings me back to the Wonder Kid hoarding. Chelsea doing this in real life is fascinating, and it is an experiment. Okay, it is an experiment, because nobody's ever done this before. Nobody has ever done this before. I know those sorts of absolutes are normally wrong, but nobody's ever done this before. All right, like they have gone out and identified players they believe to have high potential. Lots of them. And they've signed all of them. They're basically, to borrow a phrase, they're fishing with dynamite here, right? They're like, we know that a couple of these guys are going to turn into great players. So we're just going to sign all of them, and then we will definitely have great players, right? Like they're just dropping the dynamite in the lake and all the fish are coming up, right? Like they are going after everybody. And I don't know if it's going to work. I mean, what if it does? What if this actually works? What if this Chelsea madness actually works out? Like, look at this team. 8 goalkeepers. Who the hell needs 8 goalkeepers? And they're still signing goalkeepers. They're still signing them. And I'm not even joking. That's not even me making a joke. I'm pretty sure they signed a 9th goalkeeper since this was finalized. 7 fullbacks, 9 center backs, 15 midfielders, 9 wingers, 8 strikers. Fishing with dynamite. All right? Because it's true. There's like 50 people on their first team squad right now. And some of those guys are going to turn into absolute world beaters and great players. And the strategy that Todd Bowley has taken, at least, his team has taken, is that they are going to collect all of these guys, and they're somehow going to give them enough of a chance where they're able to show whether they're the person or not. And there's also that constant conversation about resale value. Economically speaking, they're buying a bunch of dudes from 18 to 22 years old that they feel like they'll have the ability to sell on for more value later. But they're making the exact same mistake the people that play Football Manager and hoard Wonder Kids make. Right? Value of a player is determined in large part by what they do on the field. And if you have 50 first-team players, then they can't really prove it on the field because there are loan limits. Right? You can't just loan 25 guys to Strasbourg. Right? It doesn't work like that anymore. I'm pretty sure it's 6, maybe it's 8. Right? But if you got a first-team squad of 50 players, you can't get all those guys loaned out to great big European clubs. You're going to be sending them down to the championship, right? You got to stick with domestic loans. I mean, the loan manager of Chelsea is going to be earning his wage. All right, whoever is in charge of actually handling the distribution of all of these guys. A separate side to this, the players that are still agreeing to sign for Chelsea, What's the sales pitch? I mean, seriously, like, what is the sales pitch? Maybe for somebody like Pedro Neto, it's the idea that you get to play in Europe. But like, are you going to play? I'm sure that they're going into the room saying you're going to play, but seriously, all of these guys, everybody's in each other's way. Why would you want to sign for Chelsea? It really does confuse me. But clearly, the sales pitch that they're able to go in and give in the dressing room or the meeting room or wherever they're wherever they're having these conversations, it's a good sales pitch. It's worked 50 times. But it is something that's crossed my mind every time I've watched one of these transfers go through is I'm like, what's the plan here? And how is the plan not leaked yet? Because apparently hundreds of people seem to know what the plan is. And to be honest, I believe that there really isn't a plan. I think it's what I was just talking about. Sign a bunch of young guys, and enough of them will work out that we'll be able to build a super team, and we'll sell off the rest of them. And as terrifying as that is for everybody, it might work. This legitimately might work. It's a headache, right? And it's clearly not a perfect science because they're still reaching and grabbing somebody like Pedro Neto, which doesn't really fit into that strategy that they seem to really expressly be following at all, and it's just confusing. Kind of makes me think that Todd Bowley's almost a hoarder. Like, he's just used to in life, everything he sees that he wants, he gets. And he's just doing that with like actual footballers. Pedro Neto, I was watching a skills comp for Pedro Neto on YouTube. Can we buy him, Bob? Yeah, boom, he's on the team. Cool. How much did it cost? You just won't have a yacht this time. That's how I imagine these conversations going. But this really could work because even those giant loan teams in Italy, they were more financial factories, right? And they were obviously not done in an era where loans were more tightly controlled and in an era where FFP was being adhered to, right? Those 300-man squads in Italy, and a lot of those guys, didn't have that kind of route to the first team or whatever. Chelsea's doing this, legitimately signing 45 guys that they believe have a chance to play a role in the first team, and the majority of them just never really will. Are they going to be able to turn around and sell Caleb Wiley, the left back they bought from the U.S., for more than £9 million if he never plays and maybe just spends a year or two at Strasbourg playing 15 matches a season? Are you really going to get your money back on that? And you're going to be able to pay for what you had to send him in wage and everything else? And that means, is this financially going to end up working out? Because the obvious downside, the worst case scenario, is this team is not able to build any chemistry or cohesion because and this is true, by the way, you have people changing in the hallway to get ready for training sessions because there isn't enough room. That's not even a meme. And don't get me wrong, there are some great memes out of this. Like this one from Out of Context Premier League said Chelsea's new team bus. Honestly, that might be a little small. You've got this Chelsea's kit man in the summer who does not have the capacity, a classic meme. Gotta love that one. Troll Football, a nice video of Chelsea players warming up this season. Tentative estimation. And then, of course, there is the actual story of the players not being able to change in the locker room because there is not enough room for all of them to change in there and get ready for training. Now, the response from Chelsea fans in this instance is like Chelsea's being attacked. Right. This person said they've included Angerin twice, and you expect me to believe there isn't a narrative building against Chelsea. I'm going to save everybody a lot of time. If you're watching this video and you think there's a narrative against your club, you're probably wrong. Right. You are probably wrong. There are very few provable instances relative to the number of times people accuse some large group of people of having some sort of agenda against a club, right? So just start with the assumption you're probably wrong and then unpack it from there. But the reason that Anjorin's on this freaking list twice is because whatever intern had to put together this graphic probably lost track of whether they'd already put Anjorin on the list at all because there's so many damn midfielders on the team. It's hard to actually check it back and make sure you get it right and hit your deadline at Sky Bet. I'm sure, those bosses they're really on top of you here. But the main reason that I like what Chelsea is doing, right, I said earlier I was going to tell you why I love what Chelsea's doing. It's because it's entertaining. It's different, right? If I was a Chelsea fan, I'd be getting gray hairs watching this because it's clearly kind of a chaotic way of doing things. But Chelsea's way of doing things has always been chaotic. The Abramovich era was not necessarily known for its calm, smooth sailing waters, even though it had a lot of success. But this is really entertaining. And I love it because I'm interested to see if this works, right? This is a football manager move in real life, right? This is like an economic football manager move. We're signing young. We're going to sell when these guys are hitting the peak of their powers, and we're going to keep the best ones, and that's what we're going to. It's going to be really interesting to watch it work. If it crashes and burns, that's going to be super interesting. If they actually are able to put together a unit of guys from 23 to 20 years old that develop together and turn into a great team, that's the recipe for a lot of the great teams in history, from the Barcelona team with Xavi, Busquets, and Iniesta, right, to even the Arsenal team that's come up over the last few years. They put together that young core, went through some adversity, and then that young core was able to grow into being able to compete for a title. Will they still bottle it? Probably, but you can't deny the fact that they're clearly a very good team right now. And a lot of that comes from rising up with that young core. So we have to acknowledge there's a chance this works, but it is insane to be doing this with real money. Like, this is just a shot in the dark, wild strategy that just has giant loopholes in it. Like, they'll just trip and fall into signing Pedro Neto for $76 million, and you're like, why? And now I'm hearing talk that they're going to try and sell Raheem Sterling to Juventus. Juventus and every other Italian team, they can offer you like a sixpence in a barrel of wheat for a player. Like, there's no way you're going to be able to balance out the signing of Pedro Neto with a purchase from an Italian club unless they just made a big sale, right? Which is, I don't know. I have no idea how this is going to play out. That's part of the charm. But Chelsea is losing its mind in the transfer market again.